everyone, and welcome to Brands Hatch. It is the 6th race weekend of the DTM season 2019, and we're so absolutely thrilled to be here because we are racing in Brands Hatch since last year on the Grand Prix circuit. So that truly is exciting. The drivers love it as well. But however, we were surprised today with very British weather, and one man who got knocked out in the qualifying is Pietro Fittipaldi. Pietro, that was really, really bad luck. I mean, maybe you can just first of all tell us you had a really heavy impact. So first question obviously being, is everything okay with you?
Yeah, for sure, I'm fine. We went to the medical center, everything's good. You know, it was a heavy impact, but thank God that I was fine, and yeah, physically, yeah.
Physically you're okay, but in regards to the car, unfortunately you can't take part in the race today. Do you think that you'll be able to fix the car, or your mechanics rather, by tomorrow?
Yeah, for sure they'll be doing their best. I mean, we still haven't gotten the car back because we're waiting. Jonathan had some damage too, so they're working on his car now to get it out for this race. Our car had too much damage to make it out for today's race, but for sure we want to be racing tomorrow. So we're going to assess the damage when the car comes back, and it should be fine for tomorrow.
Pietro, we're all crossing our fingers that you guys are going to make it. Thank you very much. And now to your commentator.
Well, great news that Pietro is okay. The car, however, significantly damaged, and as he says, the WRT team will be working very hard overnight once that car is released from Parc Fermé to enable him to take to qualifying tomorrow. It was an extraordinarily dramatic qualifying session, perhaps the most dramatic qualifying of the season so far. An extraordinary qualifying session, and through it all came Marco Wittmann to put the car on pole position. He goes from P1 with a 1:15.6, and of course bags himself 3 additional points for that pole position. So well done to Marco Wittmann. Alongside him is the championship leader, René Rast, who will be going from P2 on the grid. Then it's Loic Duval, and then Paul DiResta for our Motorsport Aston Martin. There's Jamie Greene's brother Nigel, you could just see in the picture there. It was the best overall qualifying for the Aston Martin team from our Motorsport, and he, as I say, the R Motorsport team doing a great job. Pole sitter though is Marco Wittmann. Congratulations to him.
Here's a man who did it again. I'm with Marco Wittmann. Congratulations, pole setter. That's a fantastic start, of course, but hey, we've been surprised by the weather in the qualifying, so what are you expecting for the race?
Not much more, to be honest. Probably more, or I don't know, to be honest. The weather forecast is pretty difficult with the wind we have here. It can change every minute, you know. So currently it's dry, but who knows if rain comes. So it will be a tricky race, challenging really to make the right strategy calls. But actually we are all sitting in the same boat.
Absolutely. Fingers are crossed, it's going to be an exciting race. Thank you very much, Marco. Back to the commentator.
Yes, well done, Marco Wittmann, putting that car on pole position and, of course, giving himself advantageous 3 points. He's chasing in the Drivers' Championship at the moment. There you can just see Joel Erikson. Now, we're seeing on our timing screen that Joel Erikson is starting from the very back of the grid, which can only mean that they had to work on the car following qualifying, because Joel Erikson actually finished P15 in qualifying, so can only assume that the car was being worked on, and therefore Parc Fermé conditions having been broken, that means that he will be going from the back of the grid, as indeed will Jonathan Aberdeen, pit lane staff. Jonathan Aberdeen, he of course involved in a crash during qualifying. In fact, the 2 WRT cars going out at exactly the same time and not far from each other. Ferdinand von Habsburg then goes from P15 on the grid, a 1:17.510, and as is usually the case, he goes through his warm-up routine ahead of the start of the race. As I said just before we heard from our pole sitter, for our Motorsport Aston Martin, their best qualifying result overall this season. A great job done. At one point, Jake Dennis was leading the qualifying. Here is Bruno Spangler. Bruno will be going from P14 on the grid, which his qualifying time, a 1:17.087. The weather conditions through qualifying, I cannot tell you just how dramatic it was, because there was rain, there was wind, then it was dry. Some drivers were on slick, some were on wet, and I think the race is going to be probably just as dramatic, brought about by the weather. And there you can see Jamie Greene, and they haven't decided yet what tyres to put on the Jamie Greene car. Sheldon van der Linde, he'll be going from P6 on the grid, and he's with Verena now.
Sheldon, Ferdinand and I are debating about the weather because it's really very tricky. The sun's coming out, I'm feeling some dribbles on my nose. However, you just put the slicks on, so what do you think? What are you expecting for the race?
Well, first of all, I think we shouldn't debate because it's impossible right now to predict what's going to happen. So yeah, like I said, it's going to be very tricky. It looks like slicks is the way at the moment, but it could change in 1 minute. You know, we're in Britain here and the weather changes every second. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. And we've got a lot of wind as well. So in these aero cars with such a big rear wing, it's very important to get it right and not make a mistake because you've got no runoff to room for error, let's say.
But hey, it's the first time you're racing here and you're starting in P6. It's a fantastic Grand Prix circuit, so I'm sure you're going to give it your best.
Yeah, well, like you said, first time in Brands Hatch here, and I'm loving it so far. It's a great track. Let's see how it is to race at. It'll be hard to overtake for sure, so I need to get a good start and make sure that I get clear from the guys behind me at least.
All right, go get him, Tiger. Thank you so much, Sheldon. And now back to you.
Go get him, Tiger. Sheldon van der Linde then. Good qualifying from him. He's got a third row start going from P6 on the grid. For Sheldon, for his BMW then. Ahead of him, he has Robin Freins and Paul DiResta. There is Timo Glock. Timo will be going from P9 on the grid, a 1:16.3 from Timo Glock. I spoke to him just before going to the grid, and as always, Timo in fine form and looking forward very much to racing here at Brands Hatch. As Sheldon intimated, there's not much room for error here at Brands Hatch. It can really bite you on the bottom if you get it wrong. Timo there in conversation with the head of Audi Motorsport, Dieter Gas. And Dieter's top driver in terms of the championship, René Rast, of course, going from P2. So there, Dieter Gas, the head of Audi Motorsport. Here is Nico Muller and Paul DiResta, a brilliant qualifying from him. He goes from P4 and he is with Verena.
Here I am with Paul DiResta, starting from P4, so that looks very promising. What are you expecting for the race? I know it's a long way, but still.
It's a lot more than we expected. The mixed conditions certainly helped. We went aggressive with how we went with our approach in qualifying, but we got ourselves in a good position. Hopefully we can race better than we would normally qualify. I suspect if we're in the top end of the points, we should be very welcome to that. And given the progress from Assen over the race distance, we're certainly closer than qualifying. But it's going to be no easy task. We haven't dramatically changed anything that's going to enhance our performance to complement where we are. But on home soil for Aston Martin at this British race, it's certainly a good job. So mixed conditions, windy, anything can happen, and certainly the start is important.
We're crossing our fingers. Thank you so much, Paul. Back to you.
As he says, the start is going to be very important, but very well done to Paul DiResta then. 1:16 time, giving him P4 on the grid. So high hopes for Aston Martin then, and our Motorsport, and Paul DiResta, and of course also Daniel Juncker-Deyer, who was a race winner here last year, as indeed was Paul DiResta, and so too Ferdinand Habsburg, one of the R Motorsport Aston Martin drivers, and so too Jake Dennis, of course, the four drivers that make up the R Motorsport Aston Martin team. There is Robin Freins. Robin he was very, very quick in FP this morning, and then in qualifying, a 1:16.249 was the best that he could get and extract from his Audi, but it's enough to give him P5 on the grid. So Robin Freins going from P5 on the grid. It's Brands Hatch, it is the DTM, and of course we are racing on the full Grand Prix circuit. There is Paul DiResta, who we've just heard from. The circuit is some 3.9 kilometres, 9 turns, 6 of them right, 3 of them are left-handers. So there you can see final preparations getting underway then for Paul DiResta as he climbs into his Aston Martin Vantage DTM car. And there is Loic Duval, who was very quick in qualifying and banks a point for being P3 in qualifying, a 1:16.012 for Loic Duval. And he'll be hoping for his potentially his best result to come this season. Whether he can convert that P3 qualifying position into something very good in the race. René Rast, of course, is leading the championship. Loic Duval has had a P3. He took a podium at Misano in the first race there. René Rast, who has scored, well, he's scored 21 points now from qualifying and leads the Drivers' Championship, being chased, though, by Marco Wittmann now. Marco Wittmann, who had a stellar weekend and some supreme driving at Assen. and comes here now to Brands Hatch, and of course has put the car on pole position. Only one of two drivers to be in the 115s, he and René Rast alongside him. Welcome to Brands Hatch then. We are 50 kilometres away from London, 10 DTM races since 2006. The winners from last year, Dani Juncadella and Paul DiResta. Weather conditions, very changeable, as can be expected here in Great Britain. And here you can see this wonderful iconic circuit that the drivers love being at so much. It's really undulating, and thanks to the WRT team, I took a scooter ride around the circuit on Friday and realised just how undulating it is. Paddock Hill Bend in particular. It was very, very enjoyable indeed to just experience what the track really is like from a completely different perspective. So René Rast then to the right-hand side of your picture there goes from P2 on the grid. They leave the start-finish straight and head straight into that cliff drop of Paddock Hill Bend, and there is the Paul DiResta car going from P4 on the grid. So Paul DiResta will be hoping for good things here at Brands Hatch. And as the grid girls leave the grid, we are not many minutes away from racing here at Brands Hatch. And there is our pole setter, Marco Wittmann then. Two-time DTM champion, Marco Wittmann. And an extraordinary drive from him at Assen, where he started in the pit lane and finished on the podium. An extraordinary drive from Marco Wittmann. And can he replicate the same here at Brands Hatch? This man will try and stop him, René Rast, as he peers into our camera then, the focus on his eyes ahead of the start of the race. I was talking to René on Friday, and we were recalling the fact that I've spoken about René throughout his motor racing career, starting my conversations about him back in 2005 in the Polo Cup. There's Mr. Wolfgang Schattling then, head of PR for our Motorsport and Aston Martin. So René then in the car. Extraordinary machines, the most powerful DTM cars ever. And here at Brands Hatch with, despite the weather conditions, a good crowd here to enjoy the race action on day one. And here is the grid in full for you. Marco Wittmann and René Rast share the front row of the grid. It's P1 and P2. Loic Duval goes from P3, and Paul DiResta for our Motorsport Aston Martin will go from P4. The head of Robin Freins and Sheldon van der Linde on the third row of the grid, P5 and P6. Then we find Jake Dennis, who led the quali session for some period of time, going from P7, and alongside him is Nico Muller, P8. Then it's Timo Glock and Dani Juncadella rounding out the fifth row of the grid, ahead of Philip Eng and Mike Rockenfeller, P11 and P12. Jamie Greene, P13, and Bruno Spangler is alongside him for P14. Then we find Ferdinand Habsburg and Jonathan Aberdeen, although Jonathan Aberdeen will be starting from the pit lane, as potentially will be Joel Erikson as well. And regrettably will not be seeing Pietro Fittipaldi in the race because his car was significantly damaged in the qualifying session and therefore will not be able to take part in the race. So 55 minutes plus one lap. The lap record is with Paul DiResta at 1:19.943 and 3.9 kilometres. And there you can see the air temperature remarkably is 25.5 degrees. But there is quite a bit of wind around, and the threat of rain is ever present. And I was talking to Thomas Baltes from Hankook just before the start of the race with regards to, tyre choice. And he was under the impression that he felt it was going to be a real gamble. Some drivers might go for slicks and some drivers might go for wets in the early stages of the race. If you look at the track here, it looks bone dry. But he said out in the wooded sections around Westfield Bend and perhaps Dingle Dell, that's where it's very different, and it might still be damp. Well, you can see the car there of Jonathan Aberdeen is on slick tyres. And Jonathan Aberdeen, WRT team have worked hard to get that Jonathan Aberdeen car, which was damaged following crash in qualifying. He is on his way down the pit lane, which is very good to see. Not yet seen the Joel Erikson car. So Jonathan Aberdeen makes his way down the pit lane, and he was very humble following qualifying and said, you know what, it was my mistake. My engineer told me to push. I did push, but I clearly pushed just a little bit too hard. So Jonathan Aberdeen then takes his position then, and he will join the back of the grid from the pit lane on their formation lap. So the cars get the green light then, and Marco Wittmann lights up the rear tyres. You can see just how banked it is going into Paddock Hill Bend. From this particular camera angle, there is Paul DiResta alongside Loic Duval. There's Robin Freins, Sheldon van der Linde, and weaving from side to side the car of Jake Dennis. The grid in full for you: Marco Wittmann and René Rast, P1 and P2. To row 2, where we find Loic Duval and Paul DiResta. Row 3 contains Robin Freins and Sheldon van der Linde. As Jonathan Aberdeen takes his position now, having started from the pit lane. Jake Dennis and Nico Müller share row 4. And on row 5, it's Timo Glock and Danny Junkerdea. Danny, a race winner here at the DTM event at Brands Hatch last year. Philip Engenreich, Rockefeller P11 and P12. Then it is Jamie Greene and Bruno Spangler going from P13 and P14. Ahead of Ferdinand Habsburg and, of course, Jonathan Aberdeen we've seen starting from the pit lane. And Joel Erikson at the moment, a non-starter. We've not seen Joel Erikson come out of the pit lane, so clearly Joel Erikson is not going to be taking to the grid, which is a great shame indeed. So there the car of Ferdinand Habsburg, and there the tension inside the garages ahead of the start of the race here at Brands Hatch. Dr. Florian Kamelger then, the head of our motorsport, Aston Martin, watches on. He is the team principal, as the graphics indicate. We've already seen Dieter Gas, the head of Audi Motorsport, and Jens Marquardt here in the center of your picture there, who is the head of BMW Motorsport, the BMW Motorsport director. As one of his drivers, Timo Glock, you can see there in the number 16 car. So 55 minutes plus 1 lap, excepting any safety cars. If the safety car is called for, then it is possible to extend the duration of the race. And we have seen that happen on a couple of occasions this season. It's been a stellar season so far for DTM, and we're expecting that very much to continue here at Brands Hatch as the cars make their way into their grid boxes where they need to be millimetrically perfect. So we have confirmation that Joel Erikson will not be starting the race. That's a great shame for the Swedish driver, and really sorry that Joel Erikson will not be part of it. So tension continues to build inside the garages then, and we are about to go racing. 55 minutes plus 1 lap of DTM race action to come here on the full GP circuit at Brands Hatch. Marco Wittmann, pole position alongside him. Championship leader, René Rast. Jonathan Aberdeen then is the final car to position himself in the grid box. We get the green flag from the marshal at the rear. That means the start sequence can get underway. We throw the lights to the top of the screen for you. Sven Stopper, the race director of DTM. We have 3 red lights, 4. When the lights go out, we will be racing. Out go the lights, and Marco Wittmann then gives it an absolute footfall. So too does Loic Duval. Paul DiResta with a blistering start. Gets past everybody. Paul DiResta with a lightning start. Well, problems for one of the R Motorsport Aston Martins. You can see the rear wing broken. But Paul DiResta absolutely flew from the start of the race and finds himself in the lead ahead of Marco Wittmann, and Loic Duval has got past René Rast as well. Jamie Greene locks up. Philip Eng tries to go around the outside of them all, but Paul DiResta is leading the race from Marco Wittmann and Loic Duval. Then it's René Rast and Nico Müller. Jamie Greene alongside Robin Freins, as for the first time of asking, they take to the GP loop then. Also making good progress is Jonathan Aberdeen. So the car's heading to the Hawthorne Bend, which is where they are right now. And there you can see right at the back of the pack is Bruno Spangler. So loads of overtaking already in this DTM race before even 1 lap is completed. And Paul DiResta is showing them a clean pair of heels. So the sparks flying then. And we think the car with the broken rear wing that we just saw at the start was the car of Jake Dennis. So whether there was contact on the Jake Dennis car right at the start of the race, Well, Dallas will get a replay and we will see in due course. But as one lap is put into the book, it's Paul DiResta from Marco Wittmann, Loic Duval and René Rast, the top 4 drivers. So Paul DiResta with very nearly a second margin over Marco Wittmann as he really lit the car up at the start. It was a brilliant start from Paul DiResta, just anticipated the lights going out absolutely perfectly, got the traction he needed, and boy, the job was done. So the graphics on the left-hand side of the screen indicating who is where. Bear in mind, in DTM, of course, we have a mandatory pit stop where every driver has to stop. So for the second time of asking, they scream up then the Hawthorne Hill and into the Hawthorne Bend. Now onto the Derek Milner Straight, which is where the cars take them before the long sweeping Westfield Bend. Now there is the Jake Dennis car. Now, whether that just came loose or whether there was contact right at the start of the race, I don't know. But what a great shame for Jake Dennis in his home race. He's out of the race before even one lap is completed. So the car's through Stirling's Bend, now underneath the bridge, heading towards Clear Ways at a terrific rate of knots. DTM, the fastest touring car series, looking and sounding absolutely brilliant here at Brands Hatch. And Paul DiResta, he's now beginning to be reeled in by Marco Wittmann as the gap is down to 4 tenths between Paul DiResta and Marco Wittmann. Then it's Loic Duval and René Rast, P3 and P4. So Paul DiResta's blistering start then. Marco Wittmann beginning to catch up. We're on board with René Rast then, who's chasing Loic Duval. René down there in P4. Gives it an absolute footful now as he heads along the Cooper Straight before the big left-hander. And here is that big left-hander as he executes that absolutely perfectly, and now on his way towards the Hawthorne Hill then will dip underneath the bridge and then the climb up Hawthorne Hill towards Hawthorne Bend as Paul DiResta is under investigation for jumping the start potentially. I thought it was a blistering start. Of course, the race control have so many sensors that they can identify pretty accurately whether the start was just well anticipated or whether indeed Paul DiResta was going before the lights went out, and that is under investigation as we speak. We'll keep you posted as soon as we know. We will bring that to you. But for the moment, Paul DiResta leads the race from Marco Wittmann, although Marco Wittmann is just bringing the gap down between himself and the Aston Martin driver that is leading for our motorsport at the moment, Paul DiResta. So as they cross the timing line, the gap is down to just 2 tenths. With push to pass enabled, it's surely only a matter of time before Marco Wittmann tries a move on Paul DiResta. It's not necessarily particularly easy to overtake here at Brands Hatch, and Paul DiResta will do his level best to make the Aston Martin as wide as possible and prevent. Well, Paul DiResta gets a pit stop penalty of 5 seconds for jumping the start. So what that means is when Paul DiResta comes in for his mandatory stop, he will have to wait for 5 seconds. And that is a penalty for Paul DiResta, who was adjudged to have jumped the start. So Marco Wittmann will still want to get past him on the track, though, because that will protect him potentially from Loic Duval, who's also chasing. He's about a second down on Marco Wittmann at the moment, but Paul DiResta's pace is good, but the best pace of all comes from Marco Wittmann, who's done the fastest lap so far. And the sparks flying off the front of the BMW. Here comes the start replay then. Really difficult to tell. Sheldon van der Linde had a terrible start. He bogged down. And Paul DiResta just flew past René Rast, Loic Duval and Marco Wittmann. And that's where Jake Dennis picked up that problem then. And it looks like that was the Timo Glock car that ran into the side of Jake Dennis. So Paul DiResta then, absolutely brilliant, got the traction. However, it was adjudged to have jumped the start. On board with Jake Dennis, who's about to be clattered into the barriers then. And that's the end of Jake Dennis's race, unfortunately. Let's see it from being on board with Timo Glock. I think it was the Timo Glock car that rattled into Jake Dennis. Now, whether Timo was pushed into that position, well, certainly he was. And ironically, it was one of the Aston Martin cars that pushed Timo Glock into Jake Dennis. I think it was probably the car of Danny Juncadella, but I can't be sure for that. Sure enough, it is Danny Juncadella under investigation for causing a collision. Timo Glock had nowhere to go. He was just squeezed into him. So we pick up live once again with the race order, and Paul DiResta for the moment has increased the margin between himself and Marco Wittmann by a 1/10. And both of those two are breaking away a little bit from Loic Duval and René Rast. So 3/10 the gap between P1 and P2. Then it is Loic Duval, then it's René Rast and Nico Müller and Mike Rockefeller. René Rast, Nico Müller and Marco Wittmann then the chasers in terms of the Drivers' Championship, as Marco Wittmann now really closes up to the gearbox of Paul DiResta. As the cars round that bend, and there is Paul DiResta and Marco Wittmann as they head then to that big sweeping uphill left-hander, which leads them onto the straight, heading towards Hawthorne Bend. The right-hander, underneath the bridge they go. And in replay, do you know what? I'm not absolutely convinced that Paul DiResta actually went before the, as I say, the race control have sensors all over the boxes. They can ascertain with some accuracy as to whether Paul DiResta did jump the start. Incidentally, Danny Juncadella picks up a drive-through penalty for causing a collision, so that's at least 2 trips into the pit lane that Danny Juncadella has got to make. And of course, ironically, him pushing Timo Glock into the side of Jake Dennis means that Jake Dennis's race was over before even a lap was completed. We're on board with Marco Wittmann then, who's reeling in the car of Paul DiResta. In comes Jamie Greene for a relatively early pit stop. I think also in is Jonathan Aberdeen too. So the drivers go to work on the Jamie Greene car. 8.5 second stop for Jamie Greene and 8.1 second stop for Jonathan Aberdeen. So they're 2 mandatory pit stops done and dusted. Rolling the dice a little bit for both Jonathan Aberdeen for WRT and also for Jamie Greene, taking an early stop, or relatively early, before the first 10 minutes of the race done and dusted. Loic Duval now is beginning to reel in Marco Wittmann, because Marco Wittmann, in not being able to get past Paul DiResta, that means that Loic Duval is able to get just a little bit closer. And of course, Marco Wittmann, who's currently in that P2 position, but bear in mind that Paul DiResta has got a 5-second pit stop penalty time to be added to his mandatory stop, which would effectively make Marco Wittmann the leader, and in fact would elevate Loic Duval and René Rast ahead of Paul DiResta as well. We're on board with René Rast now. The gap between P1 and P2 down to 2/10 once again, which is as close as it has been throughout the race thus far. So the cars all make their way through Druids, and you can see them really beginning to spread out now. And in comes Danny Juncadella.
What the hell is this drive-through for? I cannot, your radio is really bad again. What the hell is this?
Well, apologies for Danny Juncadella, but we can see here as he moved across on the car of Timo Glock. Timo Glock had nowhere to go and well, sideswiped Jake Dennis into the pit wall, and that's why Danny Juncadella picked up that drive-through penalty, which he has just taken. So Paul DiResta continuing to show a clean pair of heels to Marco Wittmann currently. And Loic Duval getting a bit closer to Marco Wittmann now. So the race order is DiResta, Wittmann, Duval, Rast, Müller. Then it's Mike Rockefeller, Robin Freins, Philipp Eng, Sheldon van der Linde, and Ferdinand Habsburg, who has just come into the pit lane because he has dropped behind Timo Glock and Bruno Spangler now. Just looking at my screen whether Ferdinand Habsburg has come into the pit lane or whether that was an overtake. Ah, that explains it all. He ran off the track. So that's why Ferdinand Habsburg has lost out on 2 places, and now he's going to have to claw his way back from the very back of the pack now. Dr. Florian Kamelger then on the pit wall, watches on, and we go on board with René Rast then, chasing down Loic Duval. Margin between Rast and Duval is coming down now. René Rast beginning to find the track coming to him. Only 2 drivers have stopped for their mandatory stop thus far, Jamie Greene and Jonathan Aberdeen, who'll be out there now trying to set quali laps almost and take advantage of the air that they have ahead of them and the fact, of course, that they're on fresher tyres. And now those tyres are warmed up for them because once they come in for their mandatory stop, they go out on cold tyres. The tyres are not allowed to be pre-warmed in DTM. There's Mike Rockefeller running in P6. He's got Nico Muller ahead of him. And Paul DiResta doing a very good job at the front of the pack here. There is Philip Eng ahead of Sheldon van der Linde. It's P8 and P9 for those 2 drivers ahead of Timo Glock, who's rounding out the points-paying positions at the moment with Bruno Spangler behind him in P11. We're on board with Timo Glock then, running in P10 position as he runs up to Druids. Ferdinand Habsburg in then, and there's a problem here with the pit stop for Ferdinand Habsburg. Looked like the problem with the jacks. So they're having to use the manual jacks rather than the air jacks, and that has slowed them down significantly. So Ferdinand Habsburg's pit stop time is going to be much, much longer than anticipated. They've now got the rear jack in. The cars, of course, have the automatic jacking system, which is powered by compressed air. For whatever reason, that was not working. And you can see all the leaves in the front splitter of the Ferdinand Habsburg car where he won off the track. And boy, this is such a long time for Ferdinand Habsburg. They've got a problem at the rear, and that means he's still stationary in the pit lane. Whilst all that's going on, Marco Wittmann is losing time to Paul DiResta, who's pulled out a further 3/10, and it'll probably be more than that when he crosses the timing line now, because the gap looks greater. As Paul DiResta does cross the timing line now, it's 7/10, and still Ferdinand Habsburg is in the pit lane. So the R Motorsport team having enormous trouble there with the Ferdinand Habsburg. Looks like the right-hand rear or the left-hand rear, depending on which way you look at it, causing problems for them. Well, here, Paddock Hill Bend. And Paul DiResta right on the edge then of the green strip and just touching some gravel, which will have rattled Marco Wittmann's windscreen, I'm sure. Paul DiResta with 7/10 now over Marco Wittmann, because Marco Wittmann all of a sudden is having to think about defending from Loic Duval and also René Rast. You can certainly not say that Paul DiResta is the cork in the bottle here, because he is escaping away from the BMW driver. I think at long last Ferdinand Habsburg has been released from the pit lane. That was a torrid pit stop for R Motorsport and Ferdinand Habsburg. Paul DiResta yet to stop, of course. Danny Ugadea we have seen in the pit lane, but that was for a drive-through penalty for causing that collision into Timo Glock and then into Jake Dennis. So on board with René Rast then as he heads into Paddock Hill Bend now. Turns in. Much tighter line out for René Rast as he reels in like Duval. Just onto the curbs through Druids and down towards the left-hander, which is Graham Hill Bend. Takes quite a bit of curb there and a bit out as well onto the Cooper Straight before the left-hander into clearways. So there, René Rast then. So Paul DiResta, Marco Wittmann, P1 and P2. Now, Joel Erikson did not make the start of the race. Let's find out why with Verena.
So very unfortunate for Joel Erikson that he's not taking part in the race. Joel, why exactly?
No, we didn't make it time-wise because we had some issues on the car already in the qualifying. Some parts in the gearbox broke down, and we really tried to manage it to get it together for the race, but unfortunately we didn't have time enough. So watching the race from the box today, it's a bit disappointing, but I mean, that's racing. So we just need to keep pushing for tomorrow, and I mean, Marco showed today that the pace from BMW is really strong. So, really crossing our fingers for tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Joel. Back to you.
Thanks so much. So, gearbox issues for Joel Erikson, and despite the best efforts of the team, they were not able to repair the car in time to get him out on the grid. So that's why that number 47 car remains in the garage, and Joel Erikson there having to watch from inside the garage. Right, Nico Muller is in now. So the team go to work on the Nico Muller car.
Go, go, go.
He is released.
Laps to go.
So a good time there in terms of pit stop from the Abt Sportsline team for Nico Müller. He out now, just behind Jamie Greene. Now, of course, he'll have to tread carefully through Paddock Hill Bend because tyres are cold. This is our leading quartet, though. Paul DiResta, Marco Wittmann, Loic Duval, and René Rast, who we're on board with now. They're just an example of how undulating it is out the back of Brands Hatch. And you perhaps don't realise that necessarily. So P4 for René Rast. Just beginning to get onto the back of this pack, potentially too, is Mike Rockenfeller. So we've got 4 cars that have stopped. They are Jamie Greene, Nico Müller, Jonathan Aberdeen, and Ferdinand Habsburg. And we have 37.5 minutes remaining, plus 1 lap. René Rast closer to Loic Duval than he has been for some time then. And Paul DiResta doing a very, very good job out front, but his margin between himself and Marco Wittmann is 5 or 6 tenths. And we do know that Paul DiResta, of course, has picked up a pit stop penalty of 5 seconds for jumping the start. And therefore, he's going to have to be stationary as René Rast goes for an overtake on Loic Duval and gets the job done. So René Rast moves himself up into P3. And now will the chase be on to Marco Wittmann? Oh, I think so. So René Rast now P3. And Loic Duval relegated to P4. And Mike Rockenfeller is on a bit of a charge in P5 at the moment. So expect Loic Duval to be reeled in potentially by Mike Rockenfeller. And now that René has been released from Loic Duval, he's almost onto the back of Marco Wittmann already. So a chase going on for the P2 position in the race at the moment. Bear in mind that the top 11 cars thus far have still got to come in for a pit stop.
Pit stop light, brake balance to the rear.
However,
you will racing Greene and Müller at the pit exit. Competition has more DRS and you will get a scrubbed set. Watch the white line. Pit lane is clear.
So Marco Wittmann then to undercut potentially Paul DiResta. Say potentially,
go.
It should be relatively easy
Greene
because
and Müller pit exit, racing them.
a good 6.1 second stop for Marco Wittmann. Of course, DiResta is going to have that 5 second pit stop penalty, but Marco Wittmann's going to be on cold tyres now, and Jamie Greene should be able to get past Marco Wittmann, because Jamie Greene's tyres will be up to temperature. Marco Wittmann on cold tyres, but it is difficult to get past here at Brands Hatch. So there you can see Marco Wittmann locks up around Druids. Does that open the door up for Jamie Greene to have a look around the outside? Marco Wittmann tries to make the car as wide as possible. Now Jamie Greene will dive to the inside, and that will give him the inside for turn number 4. So Jamie Greene does go through on Marco Wittmann. Marco Wittmann desperately trying to get some temperature into those tyres to bring them up to temperature to protect himself, particularly from Nico Müller. And in now comes René Rast. René Rast will be trying for an undercut as well, and so too Loic Duval.
Okay, copy. Pace was good. Wittmann pitted a lap earlier.
So the team go to work on the René Rast car and the Loic Duval simultaneously. We run the clock on both pit stops. For René Rast, it's not a particularly quick one.
On 2 stop, Müller and Wittmann on similar tires to you on the pit exit. Müller dugated massively.
Scrubbed?
Yes.
Scrub on you!
Yes, confirmed.
So Loic Duval asking if they're scrubbed or new. Right, here comes René Rast then, who's going to be defenceless against Jamie Greene and Marco Wittmann. Jamie Greene runs wide on the exit of Paddock Hill, and that means Marco Wittmann does go through on Jamie Greene. And here comes Nico Müller, who of course is chasing René Rast in the Drivers' Championship. Around the outside of René Rast he goes. That will give him the inside for the Graham Hill Bend. So René Rast then on cold tyres. Nico Müller, he stopped a couple of laps sooner than René Rast, so his tyres are up to temperature, but of course René Rast will have younger tyres come the end of the race. Depends what the tyre deg is going to be like, but Nico Müller ahead of René Rast. So those yet to stop, DiResta, Rockenfeller, Freins, Eng, van der Linde, Spangler, and Danny Juncadella, although Paul DiResta comes in now. Now, Paul DiResta has got a 5-second pit stop penalty. So there, he takes his 5-second pit stop penalty, then he stops in the garage for the real pit stop. And the team go to work.
We saw it, Paul, we saw it. Remember the pit stop line and keep your head down with good points.
Paul says it wasn't a jump start. And I have to say, from all the evidence we've seen on screen, it did not look like a jump start. But, as I have said, there are sensors all over the track, and therefore race control have got much more information available to them than that we can see. Well, look at this, Mike Rockefeller and Jamie Greene as they head up. And Mike Rockefeller then, Lloyd Duval going through as well. Mike Rockefeller having just stopped, and of course also having just stopped Paul DiResta. So of those that haven't stopped, it's Freins, Eng, van der Linde, Spangler, Juncadella. Now this was Jamie Greene running out onto the gravel, and Nico Müller actually taking advantage of that to position himself in a way that he could get past René Rast as well, and on board the splitter cam of Jamie Greene's car as they headed up towards Druids. And Nico Müller then all the way around the outside of René Rast. Here is Robin Freins, who's leading the race, but of course Robin Freins has not stopped yet. So in terms of those that have stopped, it's Wittmann, Müller, Rast, then it's Greene, Duval, Rockefeller, DiResta. So Robin Freins going longer in terms of the strategy. Just saw the wiper being used there as Danny Juncadella now comes in to the pit lane for his mandatory stop. Of course, has already been into the
Remember cooling,
pit lane.
Paul, compress the pack. We're looking good. Strong pace. You have to go to the end. Half distance covered now. Head down, drive it, mate.
Head down, drive it, mate. Well, Danny Juncadella will do that. As I say, his second trip into the pit lane, having had that drive-through penalty. So Danny Juncadella out behind Timo Glock, who has just gone through. So, like all the others that have come in for their mandatory stop, he goes out on cold tyres. And here is René Rast, who is now chasing Nico Müller ahead of him. And Rast at this point looks quicker than Müller. But he's got to find a way by as Lloyd Duval goes by Jamie Greene. So that puts him into P8, but that puts him into P4 in terms of the race in real terms, when you consider that there are still 4 drivers to stop, them being Freins, Eng, van der Linde and Spangler. And van der Linde comes into the pit lane just as we mention his name. So Nico Müller being reeled in by René Rast now, and there indeed is Sheldon van der Linde into the pit lane as the team go to work on his BMW to clear the debris, as you can see.
Pit lane. Clock behind, Aberdeen ahead on old tires.
Sheldon van der Linde, and sure enough, there is Jonathan Aberdeen. And Mike Rockefeller and Jamie Greene in this ding-dong battle over P8, and Mike Rockefeller goes through on Jamie Greene. It's actually for P5 in the race in real terms, and in real terms the race is being led by Marco Wittmann ahead of Nico Müller and René Rast. So the 3 chargers in the championship as René Rast goes through on Nico Müller. So René Rast now effectively is P2 because Bruno Spangler, Philipp Eng and Robin Freins are yet to stop. So the car at the back end of the Nico Müller car looking a bit skiddy then, and René Rast passed him with relative ease. So there is Marco Wittmann. He has the cushion of Bruno Spangler, who is yet to stop, between himself and René Rast. So he's got a fellow BMW driver cushioning the position between himself and René Rast. There's Lloyd Duval being chased now by Mike Rockefeller. There was a lap difference between when Lloyd Duval stopped and when Mike Rockefeller stopped. Here, though, is Marco Wittmann. So it says P3 on the indicator in the rear window, but if you consider those that have yet to stop, it effectively makes Marco Wittmann the leader of this race, where we have 28.5 minutes plus 1 lap of the race still to be done. So Marco Wittmann looking good then in the BMW. Robin Freins is leader on track ahead of Philipp Eng, P2. And then it is this man for real, P3, but actually the leader of the races. René Rast now has got to try and find his way past Bruno Spangler. Now, bearing in mind, Bruno Spangler, a BMW driver, is not going to make it easy for René Rast to go by. René's going to have to use everything he possibly can, and sure enough, Bruno makes the car quite wide through clearways. That denies René. He will try and have a go going into Paddock Hill Bend now. He'll come out of the draft of the BMW to go inside or outside. Well, he chooses the inside line, and sure enough, under braking into Paddock Hill, René Rast does go through. Nico Muller will need to do the same, and will try and get it done before Druids and put himself on the inside, and he does that. So he goes through as well on Bruno Spangler. Bruno certainly probably doing Marco a couple of favours there in terms of the length of time it took René Rast to get by the BMW driver Marco Wittmann. What have we got? 27 minutes plus a lap remaining in the race, or 27 and a bit, with Robin Freins and Philipp Eng still yet to stop. There, Nico Muller. And there is Marco Wittmann. Strategy has worked well for Marco Wittmann. He has a very, very good margin of some 6 seconds over René Rast, with only 26 3/4 minutes plus a lap of the race remaining. It puts Marco Wittmann into a very, very good position, because as you can see, it's some time before you see René Rast underneath that bridge. And he, of course, chasing down Marco Wittmann. However, Marco Wittmann stopped on lap 7. Marco Wittmann stopped certainly earlier than René Rast. And it'll be interesting to see what the tyre situation is going to be like between Marco Wittmann and René Rast come right at the very end of the race. There'll be more legs left in the tyres of René Rast than that of Marco Wittmann. Bit of a queue going on here now behind Bruno Spangler, with Loic Duval and Mike Rockenfeller both trying to get past the BMW, and of course Mike Rockenfeller also trying to get past Loic Duval too. So this could play right into Mike's hands. So as they head now through turn number 4, Bruno puts the car right in the center of the track. Loic Duval goes to the inside, so too does Mike Rockenfeller, so they both go through. And Mike Rockenfeller will be looking to try and reel in Loic Duval and get past the number 28 car. There's race leader Robin Freins, who's doing a very good job out front, and he is making these tyres last well. His last lap of 1:21.579. Let's compare that to well, Marco Wittmann did a 1:18, so that shows you how having fresher tyres, what that gives you in terms of ultimate lap pace. So Freins and Eng and Bruno Spangler, the last 3 drivers to stop. And just as I say that, Bruno Spangler does come into the pit lane. I can see from our control screen. And sure enough, there is the number 7 BMW of Bruno Spangler in. New set of tyres going on to the Bruno Spangler car.
Also a good advantage at the end with tyres compared to the opponents.
Yeah, not sure. Let's see. We stopped too late, but let's see.
So Bruno not sharing the confidence of his race engineer that the advantage the late stop will bring him in terms of tyre longevity at the end of the race is going to be enough for him. We will see. So Bruno Spangler then, it means that the last 2 to stop are Freins and Eng, as Paul DiResta is really chasing Jamie Greene now. And this is for P8. So, 2 British drivers here. Jamie Greene, of course, from England, Paul DiResta from Scotland, and, well, Paul not able to find a way past Jamie Greene yet, but surely it's going to be a matter of time, because Paul certainly looks to have the pace As through clearways they come now. Paul DiResta, I would think, will try and set up a move going into Paddock Hill Bend now as he dives to the outside of Jamie Greene, and then we'll look at the inside potentially. Sure enough, under braking though through the inside at Paddock Hill, he goes past on Jamie Greene, so Paul DiResta moves himself up a further place. It's P8, well, effectively it will become P6 in the race now for Paul DiResta. And this was the moment that he chose to switch to the inside and was very confident on the brakes and went through on Jamie Greene to pick up that P8 place, which, as I say, bearing in mind the Freins and Eng have not yet stopped, it's going to be P6. So good to see that in replay. Robin Freins still yet to stop. So Robin Freins and Philipp Eng, the two drivers that are yet to stop. There's Marco Wittmann, and he is ahead of Philipp Eng as well, so that's really helping his case with regards to keeping the gap between himself and René Rast as Robin Freins does come into the pit lane.
Greene stop on lap 6 and DiResta 16. You are quicker, the pace is good. P8 virtually. He is on P5, 10 seconds ahead of you.
So also coming in then Philipp Eng. So all mandatory stops done and dusted, and we have the real race order on screen now. Marco Wittmann ahead of René Rast with just under 6 seconds between Wittmann and Rast, and Nico Müller P3. So Robin Freins returns, and there's some raindrops beginning to come down now, I noticed on that lens of that camera. So this could really throw a curveball into this race with 21 or just under 22 minutes remaining plus a lap. If all of a sudden the rainfall should become a little bit more persistent, say, how is that going to impact and affect things? Well, we've had lots of drama in qualifying. Is the drama going to play out in the race as well? This is our race leader, Marco Wittmann then. So Mega Marco in the BMW then. And a supreme qualifying session has converted that into very, very good race pace as well. Got done right at the start, of course, by Paul DiResta. So Marco Wittmann then through Paddock Hill Bend. We'll keep our eyes on the weather situation. There's no meaningful rain coming down yet, but there were 1 or 2 drops, that's for sure. And we're into the final 21 minutes of the race, plus a lap. Jens Marquardt, the BMW Motorsport director, suspect his eyes are as focused on the weather radar as they are on the timing screen. Wittmann leading from Rast. Rast is, well, he's taken 4/10 out of Marco Wittmann on the last lap. Wind is brisk as well. So any showers that come in can be blown away quite quickly as well. So Wittmann at the moment is untroubled, 5.6 seconds to the good over René Rast and Nico Müller, who are both in turn significantly ahead of Loic Duval and Mike Rockenfeller, who are P4 and P5. Then it is Paul DiResta, who is P6. Of course, Paul DiResta really being impacted by that 5-second pit stop penalty. In the Drivers' Championship, it's René Rast. These are the live championship predictions. 178 points for René Rast. Nico Müller on 151. Marco Wittmann on 146, if everything stays the way it is at the moment. And who's to say? Because we've had so many things thrown into the mix over the course of just day one of our DTM weekend here at Brands Hatch. There's no telling, truthfully, as the sun begins to beat down again now, just when we thought rain might impact. Now you can see from that camera lens atop the grandstand there that there are certainly some raindrops on it. As Loic Duval continuing to show a clean pair of heels to Mike Rockenfeller, about a second between those two cars that are P4 and P5 respectively. Marco Wittmann, race leader, 5.3 seconds now as René Rast continues to take time out of Marco Wittmann. But there is only 20 minutes plus 1 lap remaining for René Rast, who stopped, I think, a lap later than Marco Wittmann. So they're on the Audi pit wall. Fastest lap now comes from Philipp Eng, who's one of the latest to stop, a 1:17.864. Compared to the last lap of Marco Wittmann, which was a 1:19.9, so significantly different in terms of lap times. Here is René Rast, who we're on board with now. The deficit to Marco Wittmann that he's trying to make up is a very, very big 5.3 seconds. You can just see Marco Wittmann disappearing through clearways. And Robin Freins ahead of Paul DiResta. So that's relegated Paul DiResta down to P7 as Robin Freins has gone through on, of course, much younger tyres than Paul DiResta. So on board with Paul DiResta for our Motorsport Aston Martin. There is our race leader, Marco Wittmann, and there is René Rast, who's taken another couple of tenths out of Marco Wittmann. Not sure that the gap is coming down enough. There you can see lap 25, 26, and 27, how it's gone from 5.6 down to 5.1. But as I say, whether that is enough with 17 3/4 minutes plus a lap remaining. Well, René certainly giving it everything he possibly can, and Marco doing the same as well, because he knows that René is chasing. So we're going to get a live gap now across the timing line. So Marco Wittmann crosses it, and it's 5.075. And into the pit lane is one of the R Motorsport Aston Martins. Are on his way out of the pit lane now. There is Marco Wittmann. Ferdinand Habsburg in the number 62 car for his second visit into the pit lane. And René Rast going through as well. So Ferdinand Habsburg sadly plumb last. And there is René Rast then. And you could just see Nico Muller on his way up towards Druids up Hayward Hill then. At the back of the picture. So René Rast now making his way through Graham Hill Bend. Marco Wittmann is within sight of him now, and that proves something of a target, of course, for René Rast, now that you can actually see the car that you are chasing. And this could be Jamie Greene in for a two-stop. So Jamie Greene comes in. This is Jamie Greene's second stop. And he is released.
Obviously all cars have stopped, so we have to do the overtaking, and the DRS situation is similar.
Copy, is points possible?
So Jamie inquiring as to whether it's possible to get into the top 10, having adopted a two-stop strategy. Let's see. So Jamie Greene in the number 53 car then. Here at Brands Hatch. Race being led by Marco Wittmann ahead of René Rast. The margin between P1 and P2 is 5 seconds. Of course, for the second time of asking Jamie Greene out on cold tyres and having to warm them up, here is our race leader, Marco Wittmann. The BMW looking pretty good at the moment. The race pace is good. And the lap time between himself and René Rast is seesawing a little bit. Last time around, Marco Wittmann was actually marginally quicker than René Rast, which is not helping René Rast, obviously, in terms of bringing that gap down between P1 and P2. So Marco Wittmann handling the car perfectly well. Keep looking at the windscreen to see if I can, whether it's imaginary raindrops or whether it's for real, because actually out on the wooded part of the Brands Hatch circuit, the weather conditions can be marginally different to those here on the start-finish straight, which is where we are situated. Blistering sunshine at the moment, so I don't think those are raindrops. I think it's just smearing from the earlier wet weather that we had, or earlier raindrops that we had, as Paul DiResta now having to defend from Philip Eng. Paul DiResta is P7, Philip Eng trying to find a way by, and Sheldon van der Linde is going to be on that as well shortly. So Paul DiResta just losing the back end of the car. Does that allow Philip Eng to get alongside? No, it doesn't. This is a fight that is going on for P7. So Paul DiResta being chased by Philip Eng here. So Philip Eng using the DRS now. And into clearways they go. Philip Eng now will try and line up the Aston Martin ahead of him for a go. Going into Paddock Hill Bend. He goes to the outside. So this is Philip Eng all the way around the outside of Paul DiResta, but Paul DiResta with the inside line. Philip Eng's going to have to be really brave here and brave it out as they head up towards Druids. This is a great defense from Paul DiResta, but a good attack from Philippang, and he does manage to get it done. Just puts his car ahead of Paul DiResta on the exit of that Druids turn and down into Graham Hill Bend. He can find himself one position further ahead than he was just a few meters of tarmac before. So good, brave, bold driving from Philippang all the way around the outside of Paul DiResta. Good respectful room left by Paul DiResta as well. So good racing between the two of them. And this is where he actually confirmed it. Right in the middle of the Druids bend, that's when he was able to put his BMW ahead of the Aston Martin of Paul DiResta. So René Rast then is the car that we look at now. So Marco Wittmann just disappearing down Paddock Hill Bend. And René Rast doing the chasing, but in fairness, Marco Wittmann has pulled another couple of tenths on René Rast, so the gap is 5.2 now. And we only have 13 minutes plus a lap remaining in the race. There's Mike Rockenfeller, and he is chasing Loic Duval for P4. At the moment, the order is Wittmann, Rast, Muller. The 1, 2, 3. And the gap between Marco Wittmann and René Rast, 5.2. Then there's 4 seconds exactly between René Rast and Nico Muller. Jonathan Aberdeen doing a good job in the points at the moment in P10, given that he started from the pit lane. And next in the target sights for Sheldon van der Linde is the car of Paul DiResta now. So Paul DiResta once again is going to have to do some defending here to hold on to that P8 position from the hard-charging South African Sheldon van der Linde in that BMW. Just a few moments ago, Philippang, of course, got his way around Paul DiResta. Now Sheldon van der Linde is going to hope that he's going to be able to do the same. So he really closes in to the back of the Paul DiResta car. Sheldon van der Linde then, who is at the moment running in P9. It's the P8 is his target, and preventing him from taking that P8 position at the moment is the R Motorsport Aston Martin driver Paul DiResta. So Wittmann, Rast and Muller, P1, 2 and 3. We're live from Brands Hatch for race day 1 of this DTM weekend at this iconic British circuit as they head towards the timing line now. Sheldon, I don't think is close enough to try and move going into Paddock Hill Bend. He really closes under braking for Paddock Hill Bend, but Paul DiResta has got it all completely under control as they head up to Druids. This is where Sheldon van der Linde really had the advantage, climbing the hill towards Druids, and now as they head down towards Graham Hill Bend, the right-hander, and then Cooper Straight before the long sweeping turn number 4, which leads them on to the Hawthorne sequence of hill and bend. That's another complete lap that Sheldon has been stuck behind Paul DiResta. So Sheldon van der Linde has got about 5.5 seconds on Jonathan Aberdeen, who is next down the order, who's running in P10 at the moment. So DiResta doing a good job in terms of defending from Sheldon van der Linde here. Wittmann and Rast, it's 5.5 seconds, the difference between the two of them now. I just wonder whether Rast has thought, you know what, I'm going to bank points for P2 rather than go all out and bust what tyre grip I've got left in terms of chasing Marco Wittmann. Sometimes banking the points, and it's a good points haul for P2 for René Rast in terms of his driver championship, or the drivers championship charge, as once again Sheldon van der Linde lines up Paul DiResta through Paddock Hill Bend. Is he able to do anything? No. We've got just under 10 minutes plus a lap remaining in the race. Here's Robin Freins on the back of Mike Rockenfeller and Loic Duval now. So, trio of Audis together here, as Robin Freins now presumably will dive to the inside of Mike Rockenfeller and thinks better of it as they go around the Hawthorne Bend and onto the Derek Milner Straight now. Then the long sweeping Westfield Bend as Mike Rockenfeller now has to focus on defending from Robin Freins rather than attacking Loic Duval ahead of him. Through Stirlings, and clearways in sight now for these drivers to complete another lap. Is Robin Freins going to be close enough now to line up Mike Rockenfeller going into Paddock Hill Bend? So Robin Frijns very much on the inside. I don't think he is close enough to be able to have a go into Paddock Hill. He takes a look at the inside, but he isn't close enough. So for another lap, Mike Rockenfeller stays ahead of Robin Frijns as they all run up now to Druids. You can see Robin just showed his face to the inside of Mike Rockenfeller, and downhill now towards Graham Hill. And then the Cooper straighten all over again. Robin Frijns is going to have to try again. So Robin Frijns P6, Mike Rockenfeller P5, Loic Duval is P4. So Frijns really tucks in behind Mike Rockenfeller now and is hoping he's going to be able to get the job done as they run down Hawthorne now. He goes to the outside of Mike Rockenfeller, and sure enough, Robin Frijns is able to put himself past Mike Rockenfeller. So Robin Frijns moves up to P5 and now will chase down Loic Duval. So Loic Duval, who's currently P4, has got the number 4 Audi breathing down his neck now, and you can see now he's got past Mike Rockenfeller just how much quicker Robin Frijns is. Here comes Marco Wittmann. 5.5 seconds to the good over René Rast last time around. We'll give you the updated gap between P1 and P2. It is 5.3 now. So René Rast in the last lap was just marginally quicker than Marco Wittmann. But with only 7.5 minutes plus 1 lap remaining, it's all really rather too late, I suspect. Nonetheless, René giving it everything he can. So, Loic Duval now under pressure from Robin Frijns. So Robin Frijns just showing his face to the inside of Loic Duval. There's not really an overtaking place there. But what he wants to do is just make sure that Loic is well aware of the fact that he's there, and he's going to try and come through, and really rather suspect now as they turn up towards the Hawthorne sequence. This is going to be when Robin Frijns again will have a go. This is where he got past Mike Rockenfeller, and this is where he's going to try and get past Loic Duval, and indeed does so. So Robin Frijns finds himself P4 now as the sun shines here at Brands Hatch. We're on board with Paul DiResta, who's running in P8. So Paul DiResta, who's got 3/10 over Sheldon van der Linde, who has not been able to find a way past the R Motorsport Aston Martin. Paul DiResta doing a good job in defending. Sheldon van der Linde not being able to overtake Paul DiResta currently. So it will be a good finish for Paul DiResta, though it will be somewhat further down the order than he would have liked. Of course, he was impacted by that pit stop penalty that he was awarded, 5 seconds for jumping the start. Under the bridge they go, and onto Clearways, which was once part of an oval track they had here at Brands Hatch going back many, many years. Over the timing line, and Loic Duval and Mike Rockenfeller now are mere shadows in the mirror almost of Robin Frijns as he's been able to escape up the road, and Philipp Eng is closing in on both Mike Rockenfeller and Loic Duval now. So the more these two Audis fight together, how it plays into the hands of Philipp Eng, who's running in P7 and quite fancies the opportunity to get past both of them. So there's Duval, there's Rocky, and there in that number 25 BMW is Philipp Eng. So Philipp Eng right on the back of Mike Rockenfeller now. Mike Rockenfeller cannot attack Loic because he's having to think about defending from the BMW driver behind him. That means that Loic Duval is able to breathe a sigh of relief, and Philipp Eng just showing his face to the inside. Is Philipp now going to have a go going into Paddock Hill Bend as DRS and Push to Pass have become unrestricted for the final part of this race. Then Philipp Eng then reels in Mike Rockenfeller. Mike puts his car to the middle of the track, and Philipp Eng dives to the inside. Is he going to be able to hold on going up towards Druids here? Is this going to be an overtake from Philipp Eng? Yes, it is. He goes through on Mike Rockenfeller around Druids. So Philipp Eng moves up to P6, and next in Philipp Eng's target sights is going to be the car of Loic Duval. So Loic Duval with 9 DRS remaining and 11 pushes to pass, as both become unrestricted in the final stage of this DTM Race 1 of 2 this weekend here in Brands Hatch, under really nice sunshiny skies now. But our race leader is Marco Wittmann, 5.4 seconds to the good over René Rast, who in turn is 4 seconds ahead of Nico Müller, who is P3. So Marco Wittmann then race leader rounds Paddock Hill, rounds Clearways and heads towards the timing line ahead of Paddock Hill. And the Paddock Hill bend, where through it he goes. His last lap, a 1:27.57. René Rast's last lap, marginally quicker, a 1:26.64, but it's just not enough. And as I say, I really rather think that Rast is thinking to himself, I'm not going to overdrive this, I'm going to bank the points for P2. I've got the championship to think of, as Philippe Eng now puts himself to the inside of Loic Duval, but Loic Duval closes the door. So for the moment, Loic Duval is able to hold on to that P5 place. Philippe Eng is coming Colin though, and Philippe Eng for BMW trying to find his way past Loic Duval. In the live championship, it's going to be Rast on 178 points, Muller on 151, Wittmann on 146, if it all stays this way, with Philippe Eng on 119 in P4. However, if Philippe Eng can get himself past Loic Duval, that will be additional points for him. Goes to the outside of Loic Duval now. He'll switch to the inside, presumably. Loic is, well, certainly proving frustrating for Philippe Eng, who cannot seem to find his way past the Audi of Loic Duval, as they're out on the GP part of the circuit. Around the Clearway section now, heading up towards Paddock Hill. I don't think Philippe Eng is close enough to have a go at Loic now. Audi Sport Team Phoenix on the pit wall. And now Philippe Eng takes a look at the inside on Druids. There's almost contact between himself and Loic Duval, but Duval is still able to hold on. We've got less than 2 minutes plus a lap remaining. It's P5 that is up for grabs here, and Philippe Eng wants that P5 position, but currently he is being denied that through some brilliant defensive driving from Loic Duval. And on board with Paul DiResta, and Sheldon van der Linde finally manages to find his way past Paul DiResta, and that relegates Paul DiResta to P9. So we go back to this battle, which is raging for the P4 position between Loic Duval and Philippe Eng. So it's Audi versus BMW into Clearways. Once again, Philippe Eng will try to get as close as he can to Loic Duval, but Loic Duval's exit from Clearways is very, very good. But now Philippe Eng takes a look at the inside again. He's not really close enough to be able to dive to the inside. It's all playing into the hands of Robin Freins, who's, of course, able to escape up the road. And all of a sudden, Mike Rockefeller's coming back into this little party. And, well, Philippe Eng is going to have to perhaps think about defending, although he should be okay, because when we conclude this lap, he will only have one more to do. But, of course, he wants to try and find his way past Robin Freins, and I can imagine he's getting very frustrated. Oh, as the back end of the Marco Wittmann car just looking a bit skittish. Then Marco Wittmann, it's Paul DiResta, no.
Jump start. I'm fucking sure it wasn't.
Well, apologies for Paul DiResta's language, who was complaining about the jump start. But he's out of the race. The car is being pushed back into the garage. That's really sad to see. Now, the gap between Wittmann and Rast has come down to 3 seconds. But we're about to start the final lap of the race. Now, can René Rast now? He can see that his tyres have got more life in them than Marco Wittmann's. Is this going to be a last lap dash for René Rast? The gap is down to 1.4 now. Is Marco Wittmann going to be able to hold on to this? René Rast now, whatever I may have said about him conserving his tyres, that's gone out of the window, because he can see the Marco Wittmann car within striking distance. So they round turn number 4 then, and René Rast with DRS and push to pass available to him. You can see the DRS wing come down on the René Rast car as he tries to reel in Marco Wittmann. The final throes of this race. The gap between the two of them is but 3 car lengths now. So round the back of the circuit here, Westfield Bend, they'll head into Dingle Dell, then the Sheen Curve. And this is for the lead of the race. Marco Wittmann is a P1 currently. They've got just 1 bend left to do. Marco Wittmann surely has done enough to hold on to this as René Rast closes. But as they head towards the timing line, the checkered flag comes out. Marco Wittmann wins from René Rast. 3/10 in the end.
Thanks for the good strategy. Thank you, guys.
Nico Müller, P3. Marco Wittmann thanks his engineers for the strategy.
Gut gemacht, René. Tolles Rennen. Knapp eine Runde mehr.
P4 for Robin Freins. Luc Duval stayed ahead of Philipp Eng for P5. Philipp Eng P6. Mike Rockenfeller P7. Forgive me talking over the team radio, but given it's not in English. Sheldon van der Linde P8.
By far the quickest Audi, and Müller, Freins, Rocky Duval all had a similar drop compared to Wittmann. You are the only one who managed the tires, so really well done.
Really nice camaraderie there between René Rast and Marco Wittmann. Big thumbs up from René Rast to Marco Wittmann then. Wow, what a race in the final lap then. So Marco Wittmann, race winner. So on board with Marco Wittmann then, who celebrates a victory here at Brands Hatch. Wittmann, Rast, Müller, Robin Freins, Duval, then it's Eng, Rockenfeller, van der Linde, Aberdeen, very creditable P9 given he started from the pit lane, and Danny Unkadea P10. Sadly we lost Paul DiResta, Ferdinand Habsburg and Jake Dennis, and there you can see it was just 3/10 at the finish line. Very close indeed, and there, what a great shot that is as the checkered flag comes down on the car of Marco Wittmann, almost being pushed over the line by René Rast. So the cars making their way on their slowing down lap around the track then. And from Marco Wittmann's perspective, this is what it looked like to win here at Brands Hatch. Jens Marquardt very happy with his driver's performance, of course. Marco Wittmann pretty happy too. So the cars making their way into Parc Fermé. And they're the race-winning car of Marco Wittmann. In the driver standings then, 178 points to 151 to 146. Still a lot of races to come because we have another race here at Brands Hatch, then we head off to the Lausitzring, Nürburgring, and then of course the season finale at Hockenheim as well. So René Rast out of the car, here comes Marco Wittmann out of his. Drivers go off to be weighed straight away. And atop the car, there is our race winner, Marco Wittmann. So always packed down there with the top three. That's impressive.
Well done.
There is René. I will ask him later whether I called that correctly, because I felt at one point that René had probably eased off a bit and thought, you know what, I'm just going to bank the points here. And then I think as the pace of Marko dropped off with his tyre deg, he could just, all of a sudden, he came within target sights once again, and René up the game. Perhaps if he'd done that a lap earlier. If only, if only, if only. And we can ask that so many times in motor racing. It's what makes it so, so interesting. But be sure I will be asking those questions of René. Still in a very commanding and good position in terms of the Drivers' Championship points. And, of course, a very sensible driver as well. Marko looking pretty pleased with his performance. And rightly so. So, the 1, 2, 3 together then. Marko Wittmann, René Rast and Nico Müller. Not for the first time. So there they are, posing for the photograph. And the drivers will be hustled towards the podium, which here at Brands Hatch is not very far away. So Verena then is with the driver that takes P2, René Rast.
So here I am with a man from P2 to P2, so congratulations. But honestly, René, I've got to ask you, were you a bit too conservative with the tires maybe? Because at the end it looked like you could have possibly gotten Marko, plus you did not use push to pass even once. Why?
Yeah, most likely I was a bit too conservative. I mean, from Assen I knew that tire management is the key, and Assen I was a bit too aggressive too early. And this time I was probably a bit too late with pushing. So it's always a fine line. This time it was 1 lap short, but nevertheless I think we can be happy. We lost a bit ground to Marko during the pit stop or around the pit stop. I don't know where we lost so much time. This was for sure the key moment of the race. Yeah, but other than that, happy. But obviously we have to be careful with Marko.
But I have to ask again, why did you not use the push to pass?
You know me. Sometimes I forget. So this time I forget again.
But you know what? You did everything right because you managed to extend your lead even further. You're still leading the championship. And I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. And I'm going to be curious if you might use push to pass tomorrow.
Hopefully I remember. Thank you.
I will remind you before the race. Thank you so much. Back to you.
Needs to tie a knot in his handkerchief, doesn't he? Race strategist there, Verena, with René Rast, P2. As he says that, perhaps it was a missed opportunity. Perhaps he could have got him. But in the end, he has extended his lead in the championship, and he's finished P2. So well done to René Rast as we see his car there. The number 33 car is very clever, is René, and knows what to do. Great camaraderie between them all, and that's nice to see as well. All three in the Drivers' Championship there, 1, 2, 3. Marko Wittmann taking the win from René Rast and Nico Müller. The rest of the order, Robin Freins, P4, Loic Duval, P5. Then it was Philip Eng, Mike Rockenfeller, Sheldon van der Linde. Very creditable performance from Jonathan Aberdeen, repaying the work of the WRT team to take P9, Danny Unkadea, P10. Then it was Jamie Greene, Bruno Spangler, Timo Glock, Paul DiResta, of course we saw him into the garage, and Ferdinand Habsburg, and Jake Dennis unfortunately didn't complete a lap. Nightmare day for Jake Dennis through no fault of his own, has to be said. So the drivers then being ushered towards the podium here at Brands Hatch. The 1, 2, 3 drivers, I should add. And in the driver standings then, as you can see, René Rast on 178 points, 151 to Nico Müller, and Marko Wittmann on 146. So still plenty to play for with regards to the Drivers' Championship. And still a lot of racing to come. As I mentioned, we're another race here at Brands Hatch tomorrow. Then we head off to the Lausitzring, then Nürburgring, then Hockenheim. So still a lot of points up for grabs yet. Ain't all over by a long shot. So the drivers being prepared for the podium. And they'll be up there shortly. The trophies to be presented. And as always, the podium becomes a very busy place, or certainly down there by the podium. Ready to salute the drivers in their trophy positions. So here comes our race winner then, Marko Wittmann. Top step of the podium. P2, René Rast. And P3, of course, will be Nico Müller. Teams represented, of course, as well on the podium. And the national anthem is about to play out for Marco Wittmann.
It's time for the national anthem of the winning driver. Congratulations to our three drivers and the team manufacturer. Now we will ask David Coulthard.
So here come the trophy presentations. David Coulthard, former F1 and DTM driver, making the trophy presentation to Marco Wittmann, who launches the trophy into the air. And there, the team's trophy awarded. Tazara Wilson, then female racing legend, making the second place trophy presentation to René Rast. Nice trophies here at Brands Hatch. And Conor Maynard then making the trophy presentation to Nico Müller. So the guys will hold their trophies aloft, the photographs to be and then it'll be time for the carbon champagne. Marco Wittmann launches his before anybody else. So the first of two podiums this weekend here for DTM. And it's Marco Wittmann, René Rast and Nico Müller. And as always, good crowd of people to enjoy the podium here in, at last I'm tempted to say, the sunshine of Brands Hatch. Hasn't been like it all day. This wind is still brisk, as you can see, but thankfully there's been no more rain, which really could have impacted on the race, but in the end it didn't. And there, David Coulthard, who I was talking to earlier on, making the trophy presentations. David himself, former DTM driver, of course. And Marco very happy. So, celebrations continuing down there with the team. And lots of photos being taken. Champagne tastes so sweet when it's a victory. So super slow-mos are the top three. P3, the Castrol Edge Audi RS5 DTM of Nico Müller. P2 for René Rast, extending his lead in the Drivers' Championship, but being chased by this man, Marco Wittmann, who wins the race. Marco Wittmann then victorious here at Brands Hatch, and he is with Farina now.
Pole to victory. Congratulations, Marco. That was a phenomenal race. But honestly, I mean, René was breathing down your neck in the end especially. Were you getting a tad bit nervous?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, I knew that he has DRS and push to pass in the last 5 minutes, so for me it was clear that he's going to close the gap, which is the issue. The leader doesn't have push to pass and DRS, and that's probably lap time related, half a second already of a gain. On the other side, my tires were kind of on the edge, to be honest. So yeah, but you know, I saw then the last lap board, so it was clear for me to just finish the lap, because even if he comes close, he needs to overtake as well. So yeah, I think we just made the perfect strategy really to stop early, to make an undercut, and it worked out pretty well, I have to say. I mean, on the other side, I have to say, well done from Paul, that he all jumped us at the start and was leading the race. I think it was nice to see that, and Aston Martin leading the race, and he did a good job. But yeah, I saw the possibility that we have a bit of a better pace, so we jumped him with an early stop, and yeah, then it was kind of controlling the race.
You were absolutely on a fly, and also you're third in the championship, so we still got a few races to go, and I mean, anything is possible from here.
Yeah, I mean, I said it already before Assen that I'm still not giving up the championship. I'm still fighting, and if you see the last 3 races, I gained quite a lot of points to them, so yeah, just trying to do our best, try to continue like that, and then, as you said, anything is possible.
Thank you so much, Marco. Looking forward to tomorrow. And now back to the commentator.
Generally speaking, when we look forward to tomorrow, whatever has happened on day 1 and race 1, it doesn't necessarily give us a form guide to what's going to happen on day 2. So it could be altogether different. But Marco Wittmann certainly doing a very, very good job today. And the pace that he had would suggest that he's going to be very, very strong tomorrow. But as I say, there's no guarantee of that. It could be altogether different. It was nice that Marco was paying credit there to Paul DiResta in the start that Paul DiResta had and the pace that Paul DiResta had, and our Motorsport and Aston Martin. That was really, really good to see, as well as Marco Wittmann's car is pushed back towards the garage now. Marco Wittmann then wins the race by 3/10 over René Rast. Of course, he makes the very valid point that he didn't have push to pass and DRS available to him. Although, of course, René Rast, as Verena found out, didn't use his push-to-pass. That advantage he chose not to use. So let's go back down to the pit lane and Verena.
Well, that certainly was a very exciting race here in Brands Hatch on the Grand Prix circuit, and we're really looking forward to tomorrow, that's for sure. You don't want to miss it, but for now, let's have a look at the highlights. So do enjoy and see you tomorrow. You do not want to miss the second race here in Brands Hatch. Bye-bye.